Welcome to the Resilience Report, where each week we share the latest on companies engaging in inspirational solutions for our planet and engage with ecopreneurs and lighthouse leaders disrupting their respective industries in pursuit of better, more resilient business. I'm your host, Florence Scott. Thank you for joining me as we dive into this week's report. It is so exciting when we see entrepreneurs leverage technology to solve some of the world's largest problems. What's an example of the kinds of problems I'm talking about? Well, one of them is food waste. To give you an understanding as to the scope, we're actually talking about $50 billion worth in Canada and $200 billion worth wasted in the US annually. On top of that, if food waste was a country, it would actually be the third largest emitter after just China and the US. Statistics like these are what created an aha moment for our next guest, Jonathan Defoy. A seasoned tech entrepreneur, investor, and mentor, Jonathan is on a mission to make this world a better place. More specifically, Jonathan is the founder and CEO of FoodHero, an app that brings merchants and consumers together to sell surplus food that would otherwise end up in the landfill. FoodHero bridges the gap between these two groups with its easy-to-use, marketplace-based platform designed to reduce food waste. The app, which is already leveraged regularly by more than 100,000 clients, allows merchants and consumers to save money while doing their part for the planet. FoodHero is an absolute success here in Quebec, with plans of aggressively expanding over Canada over the coming months. On this episode of the Resilience Report, Jonathan shares how FoodHero can help solve multiple challenges at once: food waste, increasing grocery bills, and slim margins for grocers. We also dive into the potential of technology in promoting sustainability, tips for entrepreneurs, including considerations when it comes to app development and being resilient in launching businesses, and taking care of your mental and physical self as a competitive advantage. So while food waste is such a huge issue in terms of social and environmental impact, Jonathan reminds us of one very important fact. This is a problem that can be addressed in the short term. With that, let's welcome Jonathan to the show.
All right. Well, I am really excited for today's episode, in part because I think when we think of environmental impact, often there are certain industries that come to mind. For example, the car industry and going electric, or even the fashion industry. But one area that at least I've been noticing has been picking up more and more in terms of coverage, and because of the huge scale of it, is certainly that of food waste. And today we have an expert and a founder of FoodHero joining us to share a little bit more about this space. So welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I just touched on it, but I would love for you to share a little bit more about when we're talking about the scale of food waste. Can you help us wrap our brains around what are we really talking about, whether it's in Canada or North America? If you can just help us understand how big of a problem that really is.
Sure. Absolutely. Couple of big numbers. I want to say scary numbers, but it's actually what initiated me to start this business. But we'll discuss that a little later, I guess. So let's start with Canada. Canada, food waste, it's about 50 billion. It's about $50 billion a year that is wasted. That's through the whole, I'm going to call it ecosystem, meaning, it starts at the farm. Then transportation is not a big issue. That's pretty much under control nowadays. But then the distributor level, then the grocery level, and then finally at home, because we all end up wasting food at one point or another. So 50 billion in Canada is the big number. In the US, it's over 200 billion. It's
Wow.
$200 billion US dollars, obviously. So it's an insanely big number. And worldwide, it's 1 trillion US dollars. So 1,000 billion US dollars that is wasted every year. So Huge numbers, obviously. The other stat that is, I'd say, resonating to, to help people understand how big of a problem it is that if food waste was a country, it'd be the third emitter in the world after China and the US. So roughly 10% CO2, emissions it's food waste that's responsible for it. So it's huge. It's huge. And it's true that fortunately this issue or huge problem has had quite a good coverage in the last couple of years. And that's because it can be addressed. I think that's one of the reasons. And fortunately, more and more and more is done every day. So it's one of those big problems that I believe we can tackle down the road, and not in 20 years or 50 years, but potentially in the next 5 to 10 years. So that's quite motivating as well for us.
That's such an important nuance because we've had guests from all different industries on, and some are at the very beginning stages of, for example, sustainable aviation fuel. We know it's coming for airplanes, but it's X number of years away. And this is something we can all tackle right now. And so you founded a business based on this very principle of keeping food waste out of landfills. And you did so by creating FoodHero. So can you speak to how that came about of creating the company, and then what your business model is, just so everybody understands that a little bit more?
Sure. So the story started for me already 8 years ago in 2016. I remember it was in March 2016, and it pretty much started because I've been exposed to those big numbers that I just, told you about. So I remember I opened the TV on a Saturday or Sunday morning, and I stumbled upon that documentary about food waste, and, they were discussing those huge numbers, and instantly I got like the eureka. I was like, okay, I was at the time already, had my own company already. I was involved in a tech business as a founder, and I was about to sell it. So I was looking for my next adventure. It was very important for me at the moment that if I were to jump back in right away and start another company, I wanted to have a social impact, positive social impact. So, just everything happened in a flash, and pretty much I remembered instantly. I saw the name, the brand, FoodHero. I went online very quickly after that. I bought it. It's quite expensive at the time because somebody had it.
Always step one, I'm getting that URL.
For me, it's really structuring, getting the brand, because then it goes from an idea to a project, and then I get excited and I start, working on it for real as opposed to just thinking about it. So that's all, that's how it all started. In terms of business model and what part of the overall big food waste issue we're tackling at FoodHero. So I mentioned earlier, think about it from where the food grows to where, ultimately ends its life cycle. So it starts at the farm, then it's obviously moved from the farms. And when I say farms, I'm not just like, we could say, yes, for fruits and veggies, but for meat and fish, and it's the original source of where the food is I'm going to call it produce, and then it's transported to distributors, and then from distributors to grocery stores, and then we end up buying it online or in person in a store. So the part that FoodHero does is the grocery part. The reason why we went for that is because it's in percentage, it's not necessarily a huge percentage that's wasted, but in volume, it's very big. So, from the get-go, I was going for the volume because I really wanted to make a real difference, not be like a greenwashing solution. There are a lot of greenwashing solutions out there, unfortunately. So in our case, FoodHero is a B2B2C marketplace. and in the form of a mobile application. So what it means is, on one end, we have the supply that's coming from grocery stores. And on the other end, the demand comes from consumers, mostly. I mean, some restaurants are buying, some small businesses, but it's mostly consumers. And so we're the intermediary in the middle that makes it possible to match this supply with this demand. And we're offering very important discounts to consumers for, for saving this food, because it's literally what's happening there. It's surplus inventory, it's unsold. It's really food that will most probably at that time be lost. A part of it could be donated, but it's it's likely that it will be lost when we intervene, I'm going to say, our solution.
It's such a smart business model, and it really is a win-win-win, I guess, because oftentimes when we think we're bringing in a more sustainable model, sometimes we think it's at the detriment of the different stakeholders. But at the very heart of FoodHero is, yes, the environmental side, but you're also thinking about, touched on, the social impact. And that, I think, has two key stakeholders there, certainly the merchants and also the consumers. So I would love to start with the consumer side, because we're seeing prices skyrocket right now for the price of food. And FoodHero really has a different angle of helping how to make food more accessible. So can you speak to that piece? Because it sounds like the social impact was really at the core of what you wanted to accomplish here.
Sure, absolutely. But before I even speak about the consumers, I want to say this. It's actually a win, 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 win 5 times.
Okay.
And let me explain real quick. So number 1, obviously, is the consumer. Number 2 is the merchants. Number 3 is the planet. It's not necessarily in order, but of course the planet. And then number 4 is the government, because we're generating money with literally, I don't want to say out of thin air, but from merchandise that was lost. So they're generating taxes on that. And number 5 is us, FoodHero. I mean, we're a Montreal-based company. We're growing fast. We're creating jobs. So yeah, it's really a win for a lot of stakeholders. So that's interesting. Now, for the consumers, of course, they know that when they're buying food on FoodHero, they're doing their part for the environment, but also, and I would say it's very important, especially in this, in this inflation era that we're unfortunately living in, and it's been like that for a good 2 years now. So we are offering steep discounts. So 30, 40, 50, up to 60% off. And it's also on food that people want and love. So our business model is really to replicate we're similar to like the best, like food ordering apps, mentioned Uber Eats or Instacart or, any other, even like the apps from the grocers themselves. So we have a direct connection to their catalog, and it's not like a surprise bag or a mystery bag or, buying something, you don't know what you're going to get. And unfortunately, a good portion of it will probably be thrown away anyway. So, we're pretty strong on meat, on fish, items that are very expensive. And it's significant for consumers to save on those items, prepared meals, dairy. So, it's, you can literally, in some of our stores, you can also almost make a complete like grocery shopping on the app itself.
Fantastic. And then on that flip side for merchants, so probably the main advantage is that they are now, as you mentioned, getting revenue off of what would have been waste for them. So that sounds like a whole different additional revenue stream.
Exactly. They're in their jargon, in their lingo, they call it shrink. So that's basically, that's the term in the industry. It's basically merchandise that you obviously paid full price, and you're for one reason or another, you're gonna be losing like completely your money on it. So absolutely, it's a way to monetize their what would be completely lost otherwise. It's a very good revenue stream for them because it's an industry operating on thin margins. Sometimes
Right.
people do forget that, so they're not like artificially increasing prices because they want to do that. It's a competitive industry with very low margins. So Food Hero for them becomes a very important partnership because it's basically its bottom line that we're giving them back. It's not sales, it's profit. So yes, our participating stores that are rigorous in the operation of the solution are very happy about the results.
And on the topic of merchants, certainly 2020 was a wild time for grocers. I think for the springtime, and I think forevermore, I will always think of the springtime as being absolutely insane going to grocery stores. So did that time frame impact FoodHero at all? And do you still feel any of those impacts, if so?
The answer is yes and yes. 4 years ago was an extremely difficult time for us. If we remember, it was pretty much almost the end of the world when the pandemic started. And what happened specifically to us is that we launched in May 2019. So we had launched our service a little less than a year prior to, the start of the pandemic. But at the beginning, it was one IGA and then 5 and then 25. So really, the business started to take off in the fall of 2019, where at the moment we had approximately 200 stores that were coming online, onboarding on our platform. So we were just getting that hockey stick that all entrepreneurs are looking for, the holy grail of, starting a company. So we were there. Things were going very well. We were, our stores were putting more and more inventory, and consumers were there, and we had a lot of media attention, and then boom, the pandemic started. So we lost 75% of our revenues literally overnight, 75% overnight from March 12th to March 13th or something like that. So, and the main reason was that they had like other super obviously urgent, unknown, unseen, unplanned issues to deal with. So we didn't at the time, like the 25% that we kept basically were the grocery stores that had been with us for more than like 2 months or 5 weeks. It was our best stores that had been online for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months. So they knew how to operate it. They knew it was very profitable for them. So they just kept, following the FoodHero routine to ensure that we had inventory. But yes, it's been extremely difficult for us. And to some extent, we're still so, we recuperated from it, obviously, over the years, but I'd say that we lost like 2-3 years because of that.
Yeah.
Because originally the contracts that we had signed with Sobeys and Metro back in 2019, it was for national deployment. And we were already at the beginning of 2020, planning for that. We were in the process, like the business was already proven. So it completely killed, the whole thing for a good 2 years, I would say. And we're just finally, 3-4 years later, we're just finally at the point where we're catching up with our original business plan. So in the next 2-3 months, that's kind of the big news, the big announcement. It's been in the media quite a lot recently. We're finally going to be deploying in the rest of Canada. So actually right now we have close to 500 stores in Quebec. So those are IGAs, Metros, Tradition, La Chelberry, and Bunny Schwa. So all the stores, basically the chains that are owned by Metro and Sobeys. And so in the upcoming 2-3 months, we're going to be adding something like 500, 600 stores in the rest of Canada. So coast to coast. Yeah, coast to coast. So it's obviously a big thing for us. We've been working extremely hard in the last year or so, I would say, because it requires a lot of preparation, a massive deployment like that in a short period of time. And it's just something that we've been waiting for like 3-4 years. So finally, yeah. we're there. And so we're very excited about it. But yes, the pandemic, it's been very hard. We managed to survive. It's been like very, very difficult for the, say, March to September 2020. Then, we started to see a little bit more positivity coming back and adding more stores and so on and so forth. And of course, in all honesty, we're absolutely not happy about it. But for the last 2 years with the inflation, it's still win for us. It's a win.
Yeah.
Just because we're offering food at big discounts, and it's much needed. It's much needed, and it's needed for, like almost everybody needs that now. Might have been a little bit more niche when we launched, but now it's like absolutely mainstream. So that's where we are now.
Yeah, it's certainly top of mind, and it's beautiful to see the resilience, I think, of your organization through that time. And part of it, I think, is for the adoption is through your app, which is very user-friendly and really positions FoodHero at the intersection of sustainability and technology. I would love your approach as someone who has been deep in kind of that tech space over the years. What role do you think technology is going to play within our economy's overall transition towards more sustainable solutions?
I'm going to say not even extremely important. It's more than that. It's going to be critical. Of course, I might be a little biased because I've been a tech guy for the last 20, 25 years, pretty much. I'm not a programmer myself, by the way. I'm a business guy with marketing, management background, but I did study a bit during my scholar, whatever, my studies.
Do your studies, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So bottom line is I'm a tech guy who is pro tech. Obviously, I'm not going as far as saying, oh, tech will solve everything. No, but I think, of all the big problems that we have to deal with on this planet at this very moment, and for probably, unfortunately, the foreseen future, tech is going to be a great ally, because it can be magical when it's well executed. So yes, especially for sustainability and all that. Like, I know AI has been all over the place for the last year and a half. I'm following that very closely, obviously, and I don't want to talk about the risks because there are some risks, but if you take it purely as a business tool, as a very powerful optimization tool, it's going to be wonderful because you can do so much with it. This like super, brain power can absolutely help us solve issues that human brains, thousands of human brains couldn't do. So yeah, tech critical for sure.
Being part of that solution. And we do have a lot of our listeners of the Resilience Report who are entrepreneurs. And I'm wondering if you have any feedback or advice of those who are maybe starting a business and are thinking of including an app as part of that. Clearly, was that maybe the first step before creating FoodHero that you knew you wanted to have an app to be that bridge? And just any guidance you can give our listeners who are thinking about maybe exploring that as part of their overall offering.
Sure, absolutely. Yes, I love giving a little advice on to entrepreneurs or future entrepreneurs. So it really depends. It really depends. It's like a case by case basis, literally. So if you're looking at an existing business, for example, like you need a business reason, like really a commercial reason to decide to invest in an app. Don't do it because it's cool. Don't do it because you imagine you need it. You will need to do your own work very, very seriously and thoroughly. And, making sure that there's value there. There's value, and the value has to be for your clients, your customers. So if there's a need, if there's value, if you're in established business, by established, I mean you're not starting a new company. You already have something. You probably have some revenues. Maybe you're not profitable yet, but you have a company, not project or an idea at this point. So my recommendation is really make sure you're answering a need. And then depending on if you're a tech company or not, but even if you are a tech company and you do determine that you need an app, then I would probably outsource it because it will be faster, cheaper, better. There are firms on there that the only thing they do is apps. And so they know how to build apps that are going to be good, if not great. And, like on a given budget and with a start date and a finish date that will, most likely be respected. So that would be my advice, my recommendation for quote unquote established companies. Now for new companies, again, I can't say enough, like do your own work, make sure you're really answering a need, make sure an app is going to be adding value as opposed to just say a transactional website. So if you're talking about a mobile application, the main reason why, you would want an app is because you are using you need, like in the case of FoodHero, you need the I'm gonna call it the mobility component of a mobile application. So that means that people are going to use it, when they're outside their homes, maybe because you need to geolocate them with their consent, obviously, maybe because it's faster, better, or not even possible on a website. So an app is a product. It's a product. So, and it's different in terms of marketing. It's different strategies too. It's much more difficult. It's much more difficult to promote an app than it is to promote, let's say, a transactional website, because you have less possibilities, but you have a more captive audience if you manage to do it. Always remember as well that I saw that study a couple of years ago. Company was already started, but I think the number was 7 or 8. Like people have hundreds of apps on their phones, but they only use like 7, 8, maybe 10 on a regular basis.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Make sure that you're going to be one of those. Otherwise, it might be difficult. And just expect, established business or not, expect it to be more expensive, take longer, more difficult, because it's like, just give you a range. I don't think you can successfully launch an app in 2024 or, in the upcoming years for less probably than $500,000. So that would include building it. That would include the marketing, depending on what market you're trying to attract. But please do not think that you can launch an app with $25,000 or $50,000. and it will be like a huge success. And no.
I appreciate the reality check. Yeah.
Unless it's a very simple thing that you're doing for a very established company, maybe for 100K, you can get something, but no, it's expensive. It's expensive because once it's built, you need iOS, you need Android. Anyway, you're going to need a website, and anyway, you're going to need to market it. And the KPI for marketing apps is number one, downloads, and you pretty much need to pay for every download one way or another at the end of the day, and it's not cheap. And then you need those downloads to convert into revenue, into customers. So it's not an easy business. It's a wonderful business, but I just want to make it clear it's not an easy business for sure.
Well, thank you for being so honest and transparent. I think that's what everybody needs as they're embarking on their respective journeys. And I'm so glad that FoodHero was able to launch the app and kind of build to where you are now. You maybe mentioned this being what you're most excited about right now, but correct me if I'm wrong. Is it this expansion to the rest of Canada? Or are there other projects on the go that you want to share that you're really excited about right now?
Yes, but unfortunately, I can't talk about those still secret projects, but we will be launching very exciting stuff besides the Canadian, massive deployment in the next couple of months. But we're still in stealth mode, as we say, as entrepreneurs. So we're working on very exciting stuff, but can't tell.
We'll stay tuned. We'll let everybody know where to check out and follow along after. And did you always know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur? Because you mentioned earlier on that when you were just on the cusp of creating FoodHero, you were getting ready to sell a previous business. Is this something that's always been in your DNA, or did it evolve over the years?
The answer is yes. I probably knew I was going to be an entrepreneur, although I, contemplated different options. I'd say while in high school, but probably at the age of like 9 or 10. For our younger audience, there was a thing back in those days that was called being a paper boy. So I basically was delivering newspapers. And it was, and I started that at like 9 years old, 8, 9, 10. I don't remember exactly, but I was pretty young. It was a very demanding job because you had to get out of bed at like 5:30 a.m. And the winters were pretty crazy back then, as opposed to what we just got this year. And I'm not complaining, but it's a fact. So, raining, cold, huge snowstorm, like there's no excuse. You gotta be up and go deliver those newspapers very early in the morning. But it was a very good paying, call it a job, very good. Like it was like the thing that when you were at that age, like you were literally rich.
Yeah.
Compared to your friends, and like it was good. It was very demanding. So it started there, and then yeah. I mean, it's in my DNA for sure, but I could have done something else. I don't necessarily want to say though that it's that some people don't have it, because I think everybody has the potential to have it. Maybe some people it's a bit more natural, or they get that inspiration or message or whatever you want to call it, or dream like at a younger age. But like it's not for everybody. It's definitely not for everybody. But I don't want to restrain it to all the lucky people that have it in their DNA. It's essentially like the successful businesses out there, they start from a passion. So maybe you can be passionate about being an entrepreneur, being in business. I do believe there might be something like that. But if you have a passion that you can become a commercial enterprise, then you have the potential to become an entrepreneur, and pretty much at any age. So, yeah.
And on the topic of passion and that interest, if we have listeners, whether they're entrepreneurs, we also have a lot of business listeners who tune in, who are maybe mid-career and thinking about doing an important transition towards something that's more aligned maybe with their values and more focus on social or environmental impact. Do you have any advice about making that transition?
Sure. I do encourage you to do it, but just be absolutely warned here that it's very difficult, it's very stressful, and it's very rare that things will just naturally flow as you plan them. So it's a journey. It's a journey. You can't be focused solely on this destination. You will need to enjoy the journey. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So you need to love, you need to love the running for a long period of time. That's for sure. My advice would be, again, like FoodHero, I think it's my 5th company. Let me just...
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's my 5th company. It's my 5th company. And I've had like 2 really good successes. And, just to illustrate how difficult it is, my first success was my first tech company. Okay. I started just like right after I finished my university degree. So I've enjoyed success in my first company. Then I've had 2 failures, like 2 very, very, very big failures. Then one thing that did okay just before I started FoodHero. And then I have FoodHero, which will be my biggest success in my career so far. So even when you're experienced, there's one thing that you cannot do is not do your own work. And when I say own work, I'm specifically referring to market study. Like you need to spend time understanding what you're trying to address as a need. You need to make sure it's a need. You need to make sure there's a market for it. There are customers out there that are feeling that pain that you want to, relieve them from. So, and I said passion is extremely important. It's extremely important, but don't fall in love with your project, or don't fall in love with your company. My 2 failures, it was mainly due to that. Mainly due to the fact that I didn't do my own work, and I did fall in love with my businesses. And if you do that, you're blind, and you're not going to see the signals that something is not working. So that is the answer to I'd say the first part of the question, which is about starting a company in general. Mm-hmm. Now, specifically sustainability companies, please make sure you have a business model. Make sure the numbers, it's part of your own work. The numbers, don't look at your projections with pink glasses. Like the numbers must work. In this world, you won't be able to make a dent or save the world or what have you, help the planet, if you don't have a viable business model. Mm. So that's extremely, extremely, extremely important. Of course, depending on what you're launching. I mean, I'm talking here mostly like for people that are contemplating like I want to make a huge thing, and, I will need capital and so on and so forth. But also, like, it's perfectly fine and great to just become a consultant, and you have your own, consulting firm. You start like that, and you can add people, but still, I mean, what are you selling? What expertise are you selling? Do you have customers? Can you get them like easily to get the wheels in motion? So on and so forth. So very, very important to have a business model. Otherwise, unfortunately, this world still runs on money, and dreams won't do it alone, especially in the sustainability, world, like where people are going really for the cause, the mission, and it's great, but you'll need to eat, you'll need to, pay your employees, your whatever, all the expenses that you're going to be occurring as an organization. So yeah.
It's amazing advice, and I think so important. Sometimes we do kind of get wrapped up on what we want to accomplish, but at the end of the day, you still need to build up the resources to accomplish that and to take care of yourself as a resource too. You're mentioning it is a marathon and not a sprint. Have you, over the years of those five companies, found ways to kind of replenish and recharge your own energy as a founder and entrepreneur, make sure that you can continue to come back and recommit to the business?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. I'm personally, like, I'm very, like, I'm living a very healthy lifestyle. It's been like that for at least 10, 12 years. So I caught on that trend, like back then. So of course I party, in my life, like pretty much everybody, but I'm really, really big on exercise, sleep, eating well, making sure that my body, like cleaning myself in terms of poisons that are out there, and alcohol is one. So I still drink occasionally, but for example, I do count my drinks, because I have like a drinks journal about that for a few years now, just because it's not good. It's fun, but it's not good. It's an example. I'm careful with caffeine as well, because it disrupts sleep. So yes, take coffee or two in the morning, but then I stop there. So, like kind of classic stuff that a lot of people are talking about online, but it's so true. If you're not physically healthy, like your mind won't be, and you won't be able to go through that journey and I'm gonna say win the game that you are playing with your life, and it won't be fun. You will probably regret it. So it's a serious thing. It's very, very important to take care, like be healthy as an entrepreneur. And in my case, I do push the envelope quite a bit. So I'm really big on biohacking.
Hey,
And buying all the gadgets out there. Well, I mean, it's expensive, but in my case, I love those, trying those things. So yeah, I'm really, 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 really big on living a healthy lifestyle. The other thing that not a lot of people are necessarily saying, and that I'm absolutely experiencing myself. Number one, I'm anti-social media, like big time, and it's been the case for 5-6 years, minimal. And the main reason is, as a tech guy, very often in Silicon Valley, and I've been exposed to social media very early, and when it started, and I know how it's mind manipulation. So it is not healthy. It can be good if you can control yourself, and and that was my next point. Be very careful, and, especially now, like in the last couple of years, it's been, tough years. Let's put it this way. Don't expose yourself to negative news and negative stuff all the time. And, you're going to end up in some rabbit holes, and it's just bad. It's just bad. So I'm back to like reading books. Like I said, I'm not on social media. Okay. Well, I'm on LinkedIn. and I'm on YouTube, but not the rest. Okay. So, and I try to control what kind of content I'm exposing myself to. So I think it's extremely important for entrepreneurs and future entrepreneurs. We're in a world, it wasn't like that, 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. Now, unfortunately, hopefully it's just a tough patch and we'll pass through it, but a lot of negativity out there. And do the test, go a week without exposing yourself, to all, I'm going to call it shit. And then a week where you don't, and you'll see a massive, massive difference in your life. So I think that's something to be considering very, very seriously, because if, as an entrepreneur, you need all your resources. You need the best version of yourself to show up, day after day after day after day after day to have a chance. Because it's a very competitive world. It's not easy. It's doable, but it's not easy.
I think it's so important. Thank you for sharing that about just us needing to take care of ourselves mentally and physically along the journey, just to make sure you're operating at 100%. You're right. It is a competitive advantage if you can take care of yourself in that way, because you're going to be able to show up that much better. Well, I'm glad that you've been doing that, because it's allowed you to show up so well with FoodHero. If our listeners want to learn more or download the app, and especially, I guess, check out everything you're doing with these secret new launches or programs coming up, what would be the best place for them to follow along?
Well, our website, kind of old way to do things. So foodhero.com. Obviously, the app, you can download it on the App Store if you have an iPhone, or the Google Play Store if you have an Android. And then, yes, the company is on social media. Personally, I'm just posting on LinkedIn and when it matters. So if you want to follow me personally, it would be on LinkedIn. But yeah, it could be Rosen on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, what else? All of them. So you can follow the company there. Me personally, like I said. And anyway, the announcement that we're going to make them, we're going to make some noise, because it's not, we think it's relatively big things that we're working on, and that we will be coming with. So we will most likely be in traditional media as well. So, yeah.
So exciting. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, sharing more information about food waste, what you're doing. And we like to end every episode with the same question, which is, what do you think it will take for businesses and leaders to be resilient going forward?
Yeah, that's a really, really good one. Really good one. So I'm going to try to come up with original answers here, because I already touched on, staying healthy, mentally and physically and emotionally. So my recommendation is learn about human nature, study human nature. That's something I've been doing recently, and I wish I would have done that, 20 years ago. So I'm reading psychology books now, or skimming through psychology books, using ChatGPT to ask questions on that topic, because it refers to also social media that I mentioned. It's ridiculous how human beings can be manipulated, but when you understand, how it works, first, you're going to be protecting yourself. Number two, you will be more successful in your ventures, because at the end of the day, commercial enterprises are successful when they answer human needs and they understand how human brains are operating. So understanding human nature as a general topic is very important. And I'm referring to things like biases, not necessarily the super heavy, expert type of stuff, like just the basic stuff. So that's one. And two, I mentioned it earlier, like be very careful to not expose yourself to negative stuff, like as much as you can. Like if you need to be like me, I still need to be aware of what's going on in the world, but I'm giving myself some sort of quota where, I'm just allowing a couple of minutes a day or, so because it's like right now, I think it's a big, big, big competitive advantage, a big differentiator. If you stay in a positive mindset and you're exposing yourself to positive stuff as opposed to the contrary, you will be living a much better life and you will be performing much more as well. Like you'll be more resilient for sure, for sure.
Yeah, well, thank you for being part of that positive news out there. I think what you're doing and what you've created is so inspiring. So thank you for joining us today, and thank you for everything that you're bringing to the world.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I hope that you've enjoyed this week's edition of the Resilience Report. If you would like to hear and see more, be sure to check out @The Resilience Report on YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until we connect again, remember, even on the darkest of days, we all have the opportunity to be a lighthouse for others as we collectively pursue better, more resilient business.